Okay, we're starting. We want to thank Hashem that we have the schus to have this shir. We have to thank, of course, Laser, the sponsor of everything goes on in the Shul. And Rav Nachum, thank you for making this shir a reality. And Rabbi is, I think, the catalyst for making mizahs everyone. And especially thank Dr. Zwickler, who at these moments before Yom Kippur has hundreds and thousands probably of patients and shilas. And I'm just going to share with you one nakuda that I think I was speaking today to Chashuv lady that really also, Mrs. Weisberg, that does a lot of health coaching. And she told me, she gave a class yesterday, and before that she told me she's nervous about saying things are halach, even though she's not really giving any halach lemaiseh. But one of the points she said that she was so shocked to find out is after she shared the concept of shiurim and the importance of the mitzvah of achai behem, the amount of people that came back and responded and told her that you just validated. Until now I was embarrassed. I was in a sense of shame that I have to do shiurim. So it's good to realize that in fact in the Shmir Shabbos Chasa, the Perek Lametes, in Shmir Shabbos Chasa, where it speaks about the Achil of Yom Kippurim, so the beginning of it is kishem, that there's a mitzvah to fast on Yom Kippur. There's a mitzvah to eat on Yom Kippur when you have to eat on Yom Kippur, and it's a mitzvah d'oraisa, a mitzvah v'chai b'hem. And I would never have realized how important this is to stress and to give people chizuk. So tonight, Baruch Hashem, we have amazing Talmid Chacham, also a Talmid Chacham and a doctor that's going to give us a lot more clarity also about different situations. And of course, if someone has a very specific shaila, they should speak to a Rav and a doctor. The combination is the best team. Dr. Zwickler, b'chabod.
Welcome everybody. Those are sitting here, who are sitting here, and those who are not sitting here but will hear us hopefully through technology today. Today's topic is, as I've written about in the past, to fast or not to fast. That is the question. And I'm here, I'm sitting with Rabbanim, so I'm not here to be a posek or a Rav, but I'm here as a physician just to give a little bit of clarity about the issues of fasting or not fasting on Yom Kippur. As a diabetes doctor, as Rabbi Coren said, I get literally hundreds and hundreds of questions in the days before Yom Kippur about what to do. I usually do ask the patients to give me a heads up, weeks before, so it doesn't all come at once, but it does all come at once. And in one day I get a whole flurry of questions. And even though patients have fasted in years before or not fasted, every year is different. The fact is that I do encourage patients not to rely on previous years as to how they have felt or how they have done. It's important information for me to help make a judgment call, but I never let them make the decision fully on their own unless they're quite sure that circumstances have not changed. The basic issues are this. When a person fasts, so they have two things that could happen to them. They could easily become dehydrated, or they could easily become hypoglycemic. What happens is that although many people have a very strong reserve of what we call glycogen in the liver, probably enough to last at least 36 to 48 hours, even longer, if somebody hasn't eaten well for a few days before or weeks before, their reserves are very low, and they could, after 12 or 14 hours, absolutely deplete all of their glycogen reserves in the liver and become hypoglycemic. This is without any medical issues at all. We find that in pregnancy, where the baby, the fetus, uses up a lot of sugar, so the mother's liver glycogen might be depleted very early and will have the same problem again, even if there are no other medical conditions that would cause the same problem. And if somebody is thin or below ideal body weight, they may already have started with a low reserve and become hypoglycemic. Now, when you're dealing then with diabetics who are on medications, and medications could last longer than the patient realizes, even days after the patient has stopped the medication, there is also risks of hypoglycemia. So low blood sugar is one of the big concerns, and that's why when a patient asks, whether they can or cannot fast, we have to take that into consideration. The other thing is dehydration. People do usually have enough reserve to handle 24 hours of not drinking, but there are others that get dehydrated easily. They sweat a lot. They might have had an illness before that depleted them of their usual reserve of fluids. So you're going to have those kind of people that could get dehydrated easily. And there are other things to take in consideration. Well, the point is that when a doctor is asked about about whether or not a patient can fast or not fast, we have to take many, many things into consideration. We have to take into consideration medications that the patient have been on. We have to take into consideration medical history, other conditions that could impact on how well they'll manage with fasting, et cetera, et cetera. Even with all that, I'll tell you a very important nakuda that Rabbi Coren and Rabbi Kalikstein will also mention, is that there is a pasuk in Mishlei, in Perek Yudala pasuk Yud, that says, Lev Yodei Amaras Nafsho. And that pasuk teaches us that, and it's brought down la halacha in the Shulchan Aruch, that if 100 rofim, 100 doctors, will tell a patient, it's okay, you could fast, I'm sure you could fast, you'll be okay, I checked your blood work, I did a physical exam, everything is fine, but the patient comes Yom Kippur and they start feeling not well, and they remember what the doctor said, but they just feel that they might faint or might pass out. That the Lev Yodei Amaras Nafshu means the heart knows the bitterness of its soul, even though the pasuk is not really discussing al pi pshat a person's medical condition. Masorah has it that the Torah, the Mishlei, is teaching us that the person trumps 100 doctors, and that's it. And we have to let the patient be aware also about that fact. They have to be aware, like the Rabbi Coren was saying before, about how awareness is so important, that nobody should be ashamed or embarrassed or feel ill at ease if they have to break their fast. Lev Yodei Amaras Nafsho is a very important halacha, and it trumps whatever any other doctor would say. Very critical. The other psukim that will be discussed that are involved is in the Shmartem Od L'Nafsho Seichem. There are a lot of things that one should try to do to prevent themselves from getting sick. Hydrate themselves up, eat well a few days before, so their glycogen reserves are nice and full, so that the person hopefully will be able to fast. They won't run into trouble. I'll never forget, I had a Rabbi, Reb David Lifshitz, and he was a Talmud Muvak of Reb Shimon Shkop, and he was said in his name, he was very makbid, that even though we were very, very had very intense learning, and at the end of the shiur, that's all you thought about. He thought about something else. He would call each one of us over, and we were 19, 20-year-old bachrim. And if it was a cold day especially, he would check, is our button closed, and is our coat closed? He would say, Hakol bidei shamayim chutz mitzino pachim. He would be so careful that what we could handle, what we could be mishtadel to take care of, we should. So the same thing is that, the message here is going to be, although there'll be discussion about when you could break a fast or not, it's important to do whatever you can do to avoid problems, so that you will be able to fast if you can. I know that in the same place, Rabbi Yoshe Ber Soloveitchik, he was told once by a doctor that if you don't fast today, then you'll be able to fast on Yom Kippur, the next day. And he knew that the doctor was just trying to, he knew the holiness of the day was so important. He wanted to protect Rabbi Yosha Ber spiritually said, no, if you think that I'm not allowed to fast, I'm not going to fast on Yom Kippur either. The doctors have to be also careful not to protect the ruchnius of the patients either. That's the job of the Rabbanim. It's like Rabbi Coren said, it's a big mitzvah. V'chai bohem is a mitzvah that you should protect yourself. I spoke once by square to the Hasidim about these inyanim. Rabbi Eisenberg, the Dayan, said, please remind the Kehillah that we're not trying to be makil in the Isurim of Yom Kippur. We're being machmir in the mitzvah pikuach nefesh of a chai bohem. I also saw that Reb Shalom of Belz, he once had to break his fast, and apparently he did it b'simcha tzuma when he ate. He made a big hineni muchanu mezuman, and he did it with such zeal. And they asked Rabbi, why? We understand that you want to, follow the halachos of a chaybon, but why was such simcha? He said, because not everybody gets the opportunity to be moiser nefesh and give up a Yom Kippur for the mitzvah of a chaybohem. So anyhow, b'kitzer, just to reiterate for 1 second, and I'll give over the microphone, is that it's important to do whatever you can to be very well hydrated, and for your glycogen stores to be full before the fast starts, so you don't have to run into the problem. It's important that no matter what type of condition you have or had, or what your Yom Kippur was last year, if you're not sure what to do, please ask the doctor, please talk to the Rav, and don't be embarrassed if the answer is going to be that you have to break your fast. Don't not ask because you're worried that that's what they're going to tell you. Again, it's such an important mitzvah to protect yourselves. You should all be gesund and stark and have a gemar chasim tov.
If anyone has questions, it's a great time to ask.
Yeah, let's start with questions. This is very good. Anyone have questions? Question is, what's the best way to hydrate?
The best way to hydrate is not just, although it's important to drink a lot of water, but if you're worried that you might become dehydrated and you're not particularly good at fasting, it's best to take an electrolyte drink like Gatorade. At least a good 32 ounces of Gatorade the day before the fast will help, because the water could come out of your system easily, but if the water has also sodium and potassium and electrolytes, it'll keep the fluid in your system and you won't be depleted so quickly. If you have to stay away from sodium, then in such a person, water will be sufficient. Yes?
Is there a way that you can tell if you are dehydrated?
One way you could tell if you're dehydrated physically is if you pinch your skin, and when you pinch it, it just stays up for a while, for a few seconds. It doesn't come back down. That's a sign of dehydration. But in older people, the skin stays up sometimes anyway, so it's not, in a younger person, it's a good way. You could take your blood pressure, and if the blood pressure drops when you stand and doesn't stay up, that's another sign of dehydration. If a person is extremely thirsty and they have this terrible need for drinking, that would be another sign. But sometimes you can't tell. So it's going to depend on the individual. For example, if I have a diabetic that is hypoglycemic and the blood sugar is crashing down and he's sweating and shaking and he's starting to lose a little bit his sense of thinking and getting confused, then he just breaks his fast, eats whatever he can. But if the person is just sees that he's heading down, the blood sugars, because many of them have glucose meters and they see their sugars and they see that it's heading down, or they just feel that they're getting into a mode where they're going to get into trouble, then the Rabbanim will discuss with you the halachos of pachos mikashir, that you could eat shiurim and get your sugar back up, or get yourself to feel well again, and then maybe continue the fast or continue shiurim. But it all depends upon the severity of your condition. You'll also get a discussion, I guess, about intravenous. There's chilukei deos about whether intravenous infusions should be done or should not be done before the Yom Kippur or after Yom Kippur or during Yom Kippur. The Rav Moshe Feinstein has tshuvas on it. Others have tshuvas, but I'll leave it to the Rabbanim to discuss. Intravenous infusions is not a lichatchila thing. I've put many IVs in, and I've seen other people put IVs in. It's not always a simple matter. Sometimes it could lead to infection or bleeding or other problems. If it's a very, very simple IV and it goes in smoothly, it's great, but it's not always so simple. So to go shalom kederach hatab and put an IV is not such a simple matter. That you would need in a particular case where it would have to be done, you'd have to have a really good doctor and a good rabbi together to team up to make that decision. Fast aids, for example, like caffeine suppositories and stuff like that. That's already personal decision. Some people, it's maybe even just psychological, but somebody who feels he'll fast better because he'll get a terrible caffeine headache if he won't. That's part of it may be psychologically helpful for some. Some people, they just can't fast without it. They get so habituated to certain things, and I guess if it will help them be able to fast and they could do it ahead of time, it's a reasonable thing to do. But I don't know if it's really, if they don't do it, I don't think that would be a reason that they would have to break their fast.
Take a caffeine pill on you.
That's what Rabbi said. What do you say?
If a person has terrible headaches to the extent that they can't withstand, and they'd have to. These headaches can be horrendous. They're afraid it could turn into a migraine and become a suffix sakana. Then the answer would be yes. If it's just that it'll make them feel a little bit better, I wouldn't recommend them to do it.
What if someone is on other types of medications on a daily basis, like hypertension?
So that they have to ask their doctor. Certain medications you have to take every day at a certain time of day, and there's no way around it. So then you can take it with a small pachas mikashir of mayim if they're able to swallow it. There are a lot of medications that could be taken either doubled up the day before or the next day, or at different times of the day. So it wouldn't be necessary. But if a person has the slightest doubt that if they miss their medication, it could cause a sakana, they should take the medicine, or they should ask their doctor if they should deviate from the general pattern. You can't be sure. The only way to know is that to eat healthy and properly for at least 3 days before. If you the general, just because I don't know if you all know grams of carbohydrate, if you have approximately the equivalent of 6 slices of bread, which is basically 180 grams of carbohydrate for the 3 days before. It could be as potatoes, rice, or pasta or anything, but if you have that amount, 180 grams of carbohydrate for 3 days before, you will have filled up your liver stores with glycogen adequately.
Wow, that's good information.
Yeah.
Let's mention a few little points. I really wanted to go into the shiurim, how much amount you could eat on Yom Kippur, but there's still options of having a suppository, which is not the derech. The Eretz Tzvi, he's the Rav Klav. He was the next Vashim and Chachmil Lebin. He wrote Shalas V'Shuvas. He writes in great necessity, you could permit even a chola that's not life in danger to drink medicine that is bitter, less than this year, on Yom Kippur. I'll repeat that. It's again in a case of very great necessity, you can permit a sick person that's not, his life is not in danger, to drink medicine that is bitter, because bitter is considered not the normal way of drinking, and it's not, the Torah did not prohibit that. That's the first Mishnah Masechet Yuma. and it's in halacha also. If he drinks less than a shear. I heard from Rabbi Kahanov, he was one of the co-Rosh Yeshivas in the Torah V'das, when he gave Smicha shear, he would like supplement Rav Pam's shear, and he would mention that someone has to take medicine in Yom Kippur, especially Chalash Yes Besakana. Most medicine is bitter, and you should mix it with water. We'll go into how much water it is, but it's usually about an ounce. We'll go more in detail in a second. But once you mix, when you have to take Yom Kippur some medicine and you mix it, so you're taking something bitter, and therefore it is not considered eating on Yom Kippur min ha'Torah. And since the whole thing is, since it's abundance for the Fachala, there is more room to be lenient. I can go into more detail, but it's really Shulchan Aruch Siman Kuf Nun Hey Ner Idea. Goes in Sif Gimel, goes into these points a little bit more, especially for Refuah. These, and you take something not the normal way, that would be okay. It's also Shach there, Sif Kat Ner Gimel. We're going to go back to a little bit to the main topic, or what we had been speaking, we wanted to get to. And I just want to say a little bit back on the Shulchan Aruch, and then what I heard from Rabbi Saul Belsky and Rav Chaim Pinchas Scheinberg. In Shulchan Aruch, Siman Taf Reishut Beis and Taf Reishut Ches are the main simanim about the sick person in Yom Kippur. First, before we start, all measurements of Yom Kippur are in volume. It's really, you can look in Sim Taf Pei Vav, it's in Shur and Shul Torah, Sim Taf Pei Vav in Shulchan Aruch, Sim Sechta Uktzin, at the end it's in the Shul and Shul Torah of Chaim now, but everything is in volume. The Mishnah says in Shulchan Aruch, Sim Taf Reishut Beis, the amount of Yom Kippur is like a large date, and it's a little bit less than an egg. And this is for everyone. In other words, no matter how big a person is or small a person is, that is the shear to eat. If a person can live and manage being less than the shear, then that is the amount to eat. Now I want to stop for a second and bring to this point. To someone who doesn't want to eat on Yom Kippur, this is a way to help him not to be so against it. That although it's a mitzvah, technically if he ate less than a shear, which he is required to, when he's sick, if you eat when you're not sick, half a shear is also min ha'Torah, but it's still considered fasting on Yom Kippur. The reason being is the Torah says you should be nitzemes nafshe sechem, you should make a nefesh be suffering, but it's because someone the Hashem is mechaper on you, and the chol nefesh shaloi seuna and Parshas Emor will get the chorus, but it's because the day of kapara. And the person should try not to get into this dangerous situation. Chafetz Chaim didn't allow anyone, when he was the last Yom Kippur of his life, he did not want anyone to wake him up if he falls asleep during davening, which he actually did, and he said, "Do not wake him up, because because if you wake me up, I might have to break my fast on Yom Kippur." I'll just say briefly, when I saw Moshe Feinstein, I used to daven with him Yom Kippur for several years, and later Yom Kippurs, when he was upper 80s, he would sit, instead of the front, he would sit in the back, not to bother everyone to stand up him, and he would leave after Kedusha and come back right before laning, because he felt that it was too much for him to stay the whole time. Let me just get back to the main points over here. So the Shulchan Aruch says that you should eat, in some Taf Reishut Ches, it's usually feed to someone who's sick, 2/3 of a medium-sized egg. The question is it an egg without the shell, which is the view of the Dogel Mervavo, which is also known as a Noida B'Yehuda, and he says, so according to him, it's 2/3 of a egg without the shell. Then the Bishop Brum thinks that others argue. Shuvas Binyan Tzion doesn't quote how much it doesn't quote it inside, but they say that it's a full egg. Regarding matzah, we are machmir like the shita that it's a larger shear. So that's as far as eating on Yom Kippur. As far as drinking, and I'm going to go into the actual things. The Shulchan Aruch says that a person drinks his cheekful. This is different than eating. It depends on his personal cheekful. So if he has a larger cheekful, he could drink more, up to a cheekful. And if he's smaller, then he could have a small amount, which is less than a cheekful. Now, I went to ask on behalf of a sick person that his life was a cancer patient. He had lung cancer, and he was This was, let's say, around September. He passed away in May. And he just was constantly losing weight, slowly, but we didn't want to weaken him up. And I asked him what he says about the shiurim. And it wasn't like it was urgent that the blood sugar, to eat, we're going to go into the more lenient shiurim. So he said, ideally, Saul Belsky, the Shiva Tarvida said, ideally, he should drink 0.9 of an ounce of liquid. When it's not just give water, it doesn't give you much nourishment. Take either grape juice or milk. You can mix a little honey. I'll explain that in a little detail why he specifically gave these examples. That's as far as so 1 second. I'm sorry. Eating is 0.9 of an ounce. According to the Zwickler, Shul and Torah, it's an ounce, and regarding food, he said to 1 second. If eating is he said 0.9 of an ounce ideal, and 1.1 ounce for drinking is what would be an ideal amount, and then every 9 minutes. Which, if you look in the Chassam Sofer and Siman Vav. Chelik Chaim, Chelik Vav of Shuvas Chaim Sefer, Chelik Vav. There's two Shuvas, one in Siman I believe it's Tezayin, and he writes that you should have ideally 9 minutes in every time you eat or drink. And Shulchan Aruch says eating and drinking can be combined, which means that eating and drinking is no problem of eating and drinking. But if you eat too closely or drink too closely, that would be the problem of these shiurim of eating too much. Some Sefer, another tshuva writes that I'm going to mount of shiur I'll go down a little bit later. I'm going too fast. As far as these amounts, he told me that this is the chatchila amounts. It's definitely you can have more than this. This is not absolute amounts. According to Rav Chaim, it could have a little more. By food is probably close. It's generally closer to. We say the Shulchan Aruch says the halacha. It's two places in halacha, and one of them it seems to be that the amount of a lugma of chikful is more than a ounce. Is at least it's very revius. Majority of revius according to smaller sheet is generally about 2.9 ounces according to Moshe. And as far as using eggs, Moshe Feinstein have felt that we should use the size of an average, what's called the large size eggs, the 5 sizes of eggs. This is Rabbi Blumenkrantz quoted. There's small, medium, small, they don't sell in the stores, but it's usually used for baking. Small, medium, large, extra large, and jumbo. So large size eggs is the size eggs that we'd be using as far as eating on Yom Kippur. Chavetz Chaim tried checking how much the cheekful is before Yom Kippur. You could use a lot of these whiskey glasses are generally more than an ounce. Some of them are very small, so right now it's usually they're about more like 2 ounces. So you can maybe either make a measure for Yom Kippur and make a line with the marker. If you don't have a smaller, or you have small measuring cups from these medicines, and then you could be more exact. But generally, it could be slightly a little more. Usually, it's still about if you need to, it's still like 38 grams, 1.3. It's a little less than 1.3 ounces. But we'll go. Generally, we're going to go into the time. I wanted to go a little bit into the time. The time period that you can drink this and eat this. It's something called achilas pras. Achilas pras is time to eat machlekes Scheiner 3 or 4 eggs. What is that amount of time? The Shuvas Chaim Sefer that I quoted earlier, Chelik Vav, Sifchav Gimel says it's 2 to 9 minutes. I heard from Chaim Pinchas Steinberg that this sheet is from 2 to 9 minutes, but in Ikar Adin is 4 to 5 minutes. It's very important to have this point because you can get very confused and say there's this sheet and that sheet, and the Coven Rav says 5, and Chaznish says 4, and Aruch HaShulchan says 6, and I could give you Brisker Rav held 4. He says the Ikar din is 4 to 5 minutes. He was really talking about eating masa on Pesach. It's ideal to eat within 2 minutes, but 4 to 5 minutes is really Ikar din. Now, there's a very big difference when it comes to eating and drinking, because when it comes to eating, it's mentioned the Shir of Achilas Pras, which is anywhere from 2 to 9 minutes, and that's why it's ideally 9 minutes. If someone can't manage 9 minutes, they'll do 5, but usually by food, it's not such a great necessity as much as there is getting dehydrated. A person will get dehydrated much easier than from lacking of food. And especially this could be nourishment in the liquid too. So, when it comes to the shear of drinking, the Shulchan Aruch himself, the Bishop learns, there's really 2 places, Tav Reshut Beis and Tav Reshut Ches. One place the Shulchan Aruch writes that the shear is the amount of time it takes to drink a revius. Drink 3 revius, which is like 2.9 ounces, which doesn't take very long. I didn't measure it, but it's probably not more than half a minute, maybe a minute. And some say it's the amount of time to drink it's Kshechilas Pras. Time of drinking, you have to, between one time of drinking to the next, is it's really any time you're drinking in the Chilas Pras, which is let's say either 4 to 5 or 9 minutes. That within that 9-minute period, you won't be able to drink, or whatever, 4 to 5, you wouldn't be able to eat or drink that amount. So the Chassam Sofer suggests to set this amount of time between eating and drinking. Most doctors will say drink every 5 minutes. Well, we'll explain that in a second. If the issue only comes about if, let's say, first 1 5-minute period he'll drink, or 9 minutes he'll eat or drink faster, and then afterwards slower. There might be next time the first time he'll eat slower, and second he'll eat faster. Might be in the same period. So the solution, there's a solution by liquid, but since there's another, the Bishop writes that the Gemara, and I think believe the Pi Chodesh argues on the Shulchan Aruch, and he writes the word aval and omnam, which as I heard from Chaim Pinchas Scheinberg, whenever the Mishabur writes aval and omnam, he means to pass in that way. But once Shulchan Aruch still says in Tafresh Ches, I believe that preferably you should wait by drinking the amount it takes to eat achilas pras, amount it takes to eat by food. So the thing is, because of that, there's more leniency in drinking. Therefore, Professor Hershkowitz, even this Dr. Zwickler, well, I know just this year, he told a patient that for eating he should wait 9 minutes, and she have 9 minutes, and for drinking it's 5 minutes. It's basically, since by drinking there's another, I don't know if you call it a svek, but there's much more reason to be more lenient, because according to Shulchan Aruch you're allowed to have a lesser amount, and even according to those that the whole Chilas Pras is to go with the amount that it takes to eat 3 or 4 eggs. Me'ikar Hadin, it's probably more like 5 minutes, maybe 4 or 5 minutes. Official Health was a Paisik, for Chassidische Paisik was lenient until 4 minutes. So very often they'll be lenient by drinking L'chatchila at 5 minutes, and it's so that you can have a lesser time period. I might I'll maybe touch on a little bit about IV. The Stei Chemed writes, vast majority of Paiskim hold that, such as the Ksav Sefer, Binyan Tzir, and Emek Yeshua, and others, eating food in an abnormal way in Yom Kippur is only prohibited in Midrabanan. It's not like the Shagasari that held it would be Minatara, because it says you shouldn't suffer, like Su'una. If you look in the Gemara, this Gzeir Shabbat learned out from the Man. The most places learn that eating, and that's the way generally we hold, that if you're eating in not normal way, there's no Esther Tyra. It makes things hard because IV is not something that exists in the times of the Gemara. But there's a Shalas Teshuvas Kinyan Torah that the intravenous is also obvious, is not the normal way of eating. And he wants to say even more that even if you end up having more than the minimum share, it would be okay since there's no Isser Torah. If the intravenous would be done a little faster, you could still be leaning, there's room to be lenient with it. I had mentioned earlier one thing I just forgot to mention, that certain tablets have a tasty coating on it, and if you want to dissolve it, the coating comes out very, very easily by dissolving in water. The coating could be washed off, let's say, before Yom Kippur, and then you could dissolve it, and then it could be crushed and mixed with water, and once it's bitter, it's also considered not the normal way of eating, and therefore there's more leniency, and that's why we'll see part of what we mentioned earlier from the Eretz Tzvi. It wasn't just the Eretz Tzvi, there's a bunch of other places can mention, and if you quote it in the Eis V'Hadim B'Shtabura, I think Moshe Feinstein, there's others, someone whose life is not in danger, there's be room to be lenient on great necessity. There's a point I want to mention, that even though Shulchan Aruch says a person who is a woman that's fasting, or a woman that is pregnant, or nursing we assume that life is not in danger, and they can fast. You know, if the fetus is very small, the fetus can die very easily. If the newly born fetus, it's very likely that fasting will be life-threatening. And the nursing baby Chazanish was lenient in case the stomach will get harmed, and we're talking about a small baby, especially if they have never tried anything else, and trying something. I think this was from his nephew, Nissen Karelitz. That it all depends. If he never tried other foods, and he might be damaged if it's a very young child. So if the mother won't eat or be hydrated through IV or something. So a lot of times the sakana of the child is also takes importance. There's one thing I have to mention a little bit of a woman that gives childbirth till 3 days after according to Shabur and Tzilcha Shabbos. I think it's Siman Shin Lamed Aleph is that we count it from the time of childbirth, she's considered a life in sakana, and even if she says she doesn't eat, we assume that she needs to eat. When she's from 3 to 7 days, unless she says that she doesn't need to eat, we assume she needs to eat. But usually when I think when McDonald's Nelson said the minhag was that 3 days from when it gives birth, we don't makbid on shiurim. She's too weak, and once it's from the 3 to 7, we try to eat less than the shiur. Everything depends on the situation, but 3 days is questionable. According to Shulchan Aruch, it's the count the day that the woman gives birth till the end of the day, and then 2 more days afterwards. Mishabura is lenient to quotes other shittas. I think the Coren and other shittas that is 3 full days, and he says that he leans to say 3 or 7 days. That's the way it should be. The halacha, though I think Medanis Nassan, he's a sefer right, that once it's 3 days, and it's it's 3 days according to Shulchan Aruch, and she feels that she can eat less than a shiur. By all means, let her do so. But I just would like to. I'm going to give. If anyone wants to ask questions, or I should really give Rabbi Coren, because he didn't really speak much, to continue speaking. And if anyone has any questions, they're welcome to ask. It's always good to ask your Rav, who knows you and knows the situations. Usually better, or your doctor that knows your personal situation. Because then don't wait, as I mentioned earlier, don't wait till the last minute, because sometimes you might not be able to get through. And Rabbi Moshe Feinstein in general says that the person is not required to take IV just so he should be able to fast. In fact, he's really opposed it because he might harm himself by doing so. But there's definitely, if you have someone who's an expert at doing it, there are people who do it, and it's definitely not, as far as Issur Torah, there's not, as I mentioned earlier, there's no Issur Torah in taking it that way. as I mentioned earlier, medicine, if it's taken through suppository, it's ideal, because if the water is not bitter, then it would be problem. It's eating less than a shear, and if it's done through suppository, or if it's bitter, so then it's not a Torah anyway. But a person whose life is in danger is supposed to eat what's necessary to preserve a life, but not more so. But if there is any possibility to save life, to cause a person's life to get in danger, even if it's a later amount of time, and even a person could prolong if someone's life is in danger, and even they could prolong someone's life even for a minute. The Shulchan Aruch Siman Shin Chav Tes, I believe it's Siv Gimel. Siv Gimel writes that it's a mitzvah to save a person's life, even if a person's bruised. And Halachos says even if you're going to be unconscious and in a coma, the mitzvah of Chai B'hem is that the Torah is given to have a person's life. There's other reasons that also you may be able to do more mitzvahs or do tshuvas as a miri, but the Rabbi Halachos says that you don't need to come on to that, even if a person will be unconscious and you just want to save a person's life even for several minutes and you prolong their life. It's a mitzvah to do so, and anyone who's helping them has a tremendous mitzvah of helping a chola, and even though maybe he feels like he's doing less in Yom Kippur, the main mitzvah of Yom Kippur is to do tshuva. It says, we said last week's parsha, the mitzvah, according to the way the Ramban learns, the mitzvah of tshuva is very close to you. It is in your heart, in your mouth and your heart to do so. Tshuva can be done anywhere. You could just think to have charata, be sorry for what you did, speak out vidui, accept upon yourself not to do so. That could be done anywhere, and even if you're not in Shul and you can't make it to Shul, a person's life, if a person doesn't have to endanger the life, don't have to come on to eating Yom Kippur. It may be it's definitely preferable than after violent Yom Kippur laws, just because you want to come to Shul. But if a person's life is in danger, they must. It's a mitzvah, and it may be worthwhile encouraging the person who's afraid to eat on Yom Kippur that he's doing a mitzvah, and if it's less than this year, then they're fulfilling the mitzvah Yom Kippur too. I thank everyone for attending. If anyone has any more questions, they're welcome. They can try. Rabbi Coren, would you like to mention anything?
Any questions? Because we're going to have slichas in a few minutes, so we're going to end unless someone has a specific question. And if you want to say privately, you could also ask privately. What?
Oh, there's one more thing I'd like to mention.
What was the question?
I know there's one mention. I know what he's asking. There's one thing I want to mention. There's something called I'll make a preview. There's a question asked: how do we people drink, whiskey and make kiddush on something that's not a shir revius? It's maybe an ounce and a half or whatever these shot cups or whatever they are. And the Tzvi writes, he's Rashi Chacham Lublin. He wrote that since it's not from the 7 liquids and those liquids that are considered liquid according to Torah, when you drink those liquids, as if you are, let's say, apple juice that's not from concentrate, as if you're eating food and not liquid. So I think that is why Rabbi Saul Belsky specifically mentioned these specific liquids: milk, water, honey, and grape juice, because those are all liquids according to the Torah. And if a person eats and drinks, he should drink those liquids and specifically avoid drinking, let's say, orange juice, apple juice, not from concentrate, which may be halachically considered as eating food. And that's what I think it was his genius. He put it in, but he didn't spell it out. But I think that's what he perhaps meant. So it's worth sticking to those 4 liquids. If you need more fluids, you might need water, but generally, as Shlomo Zalman Auerbach says, Belsky said, that it's good to have something which will give you some nourishment too in the liquids, and not just plain water. Okay, thank you everyone for attending.